Right. Good afternoon to everyone, and thank you, Branson, once again. I am Motlakadibe from Botswana. I am currently the Senior Internal Auditor here in Botswana Unified Revenue Services, an organization which performs tax assessment and collection function on behalf of the government of Botswana. I have over 7 years of work experience, which cuts across audit, advisory, risk management. My experience spans across financial services sector, telecommunications, insurance, and mining sector. I hold a Bachelor of Science with first class honors in Business Information Systems. I am a certified information systems auditor, and I'm also a Prince2 practitioner. I'm also a member of ISACA Global and also the Gaborone chapter, where I serve as a membership director. Right. As you can see from the screen, I'll take you through the topic of the role of the internal audit in business continuity planning. That's how my presentation will flow. We'll first look at the definitions of the internal audit and the business continuity, and we'll look at the role of internal audit in business continuity, and we'll also look at how COVID-19 has impacted the internal audit process. And we'll also have a look at the recommendation for successfully auditing BCM in crisis management. And I will conclude my presentation. Right. Oh, Brent, are you doing on my behalf?
Okay, I think if you can control it, it's still okay. I'll now let you control it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right. For the sake of those who might not be coming from the discipline of internal audit, I had put this definition for you to appreciate it. Internal audit, according to the Institute of Internal Audit, internal audit is an independent, objective assurance and consulting activity designed to add value and improve an organization's operations. It helps an organization to accomplish its objectives by bringing a systematic, a disciplined approach to evaluate and improve the effectiveness of risk management, control, and governance processes. I think it's worth noting that business continuity is a subset of the risk management strategy or the risk management process. So as we evaluate the effectiveness of the risk management, we are indirectly touching on BCM. Yeah. Right. Now, what is business continuity? Business continuity is defined by ISO 22301 and ISO 22313 as the capability of an organization to continue delivery of products or services at an acceptable predefined levels following a disruptive incident. As Mr. Osman has mentioned earlier on, we find ourselves in a pandemic where every organization is able to assess and gauge its continuity plan. How are they able to sustain and deal with the pandemic at the moment? So I believe every one of us in this webinar, we are able to relate and gauge where we are in terms of sustaining our processes in the midst of the pandemic. Right. Now, in terms of our role as an internal audit function, to help the business to prepare for the unexpected, or our role in business continuity. The first thing, sorry, I got distracted by a pop-up on my screen. The first thing, as a function, we have to evaluate our BCP or the DRP during formulation. Because of our background as the internal audit, we have thorough understanding of the business, and even our independent relationship that we have with the different functions across the organization put us in the right state to be able to evaluate the BCP during the formulation process. And then the second point is to evaluate the business continuity readiness. that's after formulating it, we need to be able to check whether it's ready to be able to withstand or to be able to ensure that there will be a smooth running of the business during the pandemic as we find ourselves in because of COVID-19. Another point is we have to assess the business continuity on a regular basis and provide preparedness summary to senior management. It is important that we feedback our management, our senior management, in terms of the preparedness of our BC, so that when there is anything that needs to, when there are key decisions that needs to be made, where there are gaps that needs to be addressed, that can be attended to as soon as possible and well on time. Review the proposed business continuity and disaster recovery plans for design, completeness, and overall adequacy. I believe that from the point that I made earlier, that as internal audit, we have a thorough understanding of the business. We are better placed to make sure that we assess the design. Has it been designed effectively? And even the completeness. Is our BCP, is it covering all the critical plans? Is it covering all the critical business process of the organization? And even decide and assess the overall adequacy, whether it's adequate to be able to withstand the pandemics or the crisis whenever they hit. Right. And then the last one will be to periodically audit the organization's BCP. So for some organizations or for some people, they practice an annual review of the BCPs, but I think frequency, it varies from organization to organization, depending on the size, depending on the nature of the business. So periodically auditing of the BCP is very critical, and that's our role as internal audit, that we have to ensure we play very well. Right. Now, in my next slide is, say now you are doing your audit as an internal audit. So these are some of the key things that you have to make sure you check. The first one will be to check if all your plans are up to date. So we have to check and assess that indeed are all our plans up to date. In terms of the critical systems, if we have procured systems, have they been incorporated in our BCP? If we have any changes in terms of the role of the people who are part of the BCP, have we updated that? Is it up to date? And then the next point is, are all critical business functions and systems covered? Yeah, I think it relates to the earlier point that I mentioned. And then are the plans based on risks and potential impact? Because you don't want to have a plan where you have risks it's composed of risks that are not of high to the business, that are not of high impact to the business. So your plan, as an auditor, you need to check and make sure that all the plans that our plan is based on risks that are of high impact to the organizations. Are the plans fully documented? Your BCP plan, it has to be fully documented. So we have to check as auditors and assess that. Is it really fully documented? Can somebody appreciate it without having to go back and forth, without understanding what the BCP plan is saying in terms of who needs to do what and everything should the crisis hit? And then we also have the functional responsibilities being assigned. So you need to know that it's not everyone who takes part. So you need to check that the people that have been assigned, are they the relevant people? Because you have to understand that in the plan, you have a various number of stakeholders involved. So some, like Mr. Osman mentioned earlier on, they are the people, they are experts in their areas. So you need to be able to ascertain and give yourself assurance that indeed everyone who is in the plan, they are as per they've been assigned the right responsibilities. Are the plans tested and revised on the result? As you do, as I mentioned earlier on, that there must be an annual test of your plan. You also have to check that as you do your tests, are you updating your plan based on the results of your tests? Where there are gaps, are you closing those gaps? Then is the organization capable of the prepared? Is the organization capable and prepared to implement the plan? So here you have to ensure that you don't have an ambitious plan. So the plan that you have prepared, you need to make sure that you are able to test it, and the organization is able to ensure that it execute such plan. I think I'll skip some because I have a lot. Right. In my next slide is say it is during the pandemic. the role that we have to play as an internal audit function. So as we find ourselves in COVID-19, one of the things that we have to do is to monitor the effectiveness of the recovery and the control operations. So as people are busy executing the BCP, now from your audit point of view, you have to assess and check whether we are doing that effectively, whether we are doing it as per the plan that has been documented, so that when there are gaps, we are able to recommend improvements. And then lastly, I would say assist in identifying lessons learned from the disaster and the recovery operations. Of course, for you to develop your BCP, you have to take into considerations lessons learned and be able to tighten loopholes and ensure that your BCP is adequate as much as possible. Right. My next slide is to do with a recommendation for a successful auditing of the BCP or crisis management plan. The first thing that I've put there is the scope. For you to say you have adequately audited your BCP, you have to ensure that your scope is very critical. You have to ensure that does your audit cover both business continuity and disaster recovery plans? Because in most instances, you find that people, we tend to confuse these two. So as an auditor, when you make your scope, you have to ensure that it is very clear in terms of where are you going to look and what are you going to review. You have to check, are all your mission critical systems covered in the plan, or are the systems specific that are going to be, or do you have certain specific systems that you are going to be checking? So the scope is very critical to ensure that it is very clear from the get-go. And then the second one is management. Here I'm actually trying to referring to ensuring the roles and responsibility of the people that are involved in the BCP. They have to be clearly involved. So as an auditor, when you check, you have to know that it has to be clear. You have to know who's involved in the business continuity plan. You have to make sure that everyone knows what they are supposed to do, who is held accountable for the success or the failure of the plan, who needs to be involved in developing and training and testing. Because like we said, like Mr. Osman said earlier, it's a plan which comprises of different stakeholders. So in terms of testing, you need to know who to engage, because some people are expert in their areas, or they can know well or do better in their areas. So you need to know who does what and when. And then my third one is the maintenance. Our BCP isn't one done procedure, so it's an ongoing process. So even ourselves as auditors, we have to make sure that you continually check it. We have to make sure that there is continuous updating of the plan, and at the same time, even ourselves as auditors, we continually audit it and ensure that everything is intact and up to date. And the last one is confidentiality. The results of the BCP audit should be adequately protected, because in this era that we are living in, where cybercrime rates have escalated like crazy, so we need to make sure that we protect information that deals with the confidentiality of our BCP. So as an auditor, you need to take that into consideration. Right. And then my next slide is to do with how COVID has impacted our audit process. First one being virtual audit. I mean, everyone across the globe, we have had serious social distancing protocols imposed. And as a matter of fact, even as auditors, we have been staying home. So as a result, we have since seen, or we are likely to even experience, the rise in virtual audits, where now we are no longer going to have to do person-to-person or on-site audits, and rather go in the virtual approach of doing our audits. But I must say that proper planning is very key in our virtual audit. So for you to ensure an effective audit, you have to ensure that your planning is very important. And then the second one is changes to audit focus or audit plan. Obviously, we'll have to, with COVID now in place, we have to be flexible. We have to revise our audit plans. So organizations have to consider postponing some of our audits and shift our focus to areas that are providing critical services to the business. So the focus cannot be rigid. We have to be there has to be a bit of flexibility in there. And then I think the auditing planning activities, it goes hand in hand with the previous point, where now you have to now zoom your audit focus into certain activities, because now you cannot be read and stick to your initial plan. You have to reshift, you have to refocus your audit activities to ensure that you align them to the BCP of the organization, of course. And then the last one is to do with risk assessment. So as internal auditors, of course, we have to now help management and the board in terms of shifting, because of the shifting risk and control landscape, and even to help them anticipate the emergent risks. So that's one of the ways that our process, internal audit process, is being impacted by COVID-19. So as I come to conclusion of my presentation, I would say continuous auditing of the BCP process is very critical, both at the inception and in future. And keeping management informed on the progress towards BCM and development and implementation. It is very critical that we feedback our management, because they are the ones who make critical decisions, and they can be a showstopper to the success of your BCM or your BCP. And then participation in the risk assessment and business impact analysis. Like I mentioned earlier, that as the internal auditors, we are people who deal with everyone in the business. So our participation in risk assessments will be of very importance to the success of the BCP. Thank you. I think that's all from my end. Thanks. Over to you, Brancy.
Okay. Thank you so much, Billy, for the insightful presentation on the role of internal auditors in business continuity.